Hey, what's going on, guys? Doing an update here for you. Let's start with BTC. Um, I'll go pretty quick here and try to hit all the majors, and then maybe we'll cover some alts that have been just absolutely getting beat up for weeks and weeks now. So probably due for a bounce, dead cat bounce, oversold, relieving rebound, however you want to characterize it. But BTC, let's look at the cycles. We're coming into, man, these last 3 weeks have just been brutal. Sideways, literally the flattest I've seen it maybe since this June period here, and even back in March. I mean, at least after this March sideways action, we went on a 2,000 point rally, 3,000 point rally. This has just been dead. So anyway, the good thing is we're closing out August, so the summer's coming to an end. You're gonna have markets picking up energy in general, as the professional traders, institutional guys will take more risk here in the back half of the year. Got a lot of things global macro that probably going to play out, so should be more energy in the markets in general. Doesn't necessarily pass through to crypto, but again, we think this 8.6 month cycle is pretty major, so we're past the turning point. The next daily turn here is the third, so that's into next week, right? No, the third is, yeah, that'll be next Monday. So maybe we rally into next Monday. We'll have to kind of see what price wants to do. But from a timing perspective, that's the next cycle turn. And then this is pretty major here. Once we get more through the third week in September, I think this is kind of lining up as a major turn. We'll clearly be cycling up on the longer wave, and then we'll have two turning points here. I'd expect a directional change, whether that's coming out of a downturn into an uptrend, or if we rally significantly, say to retest like 8,000 on that turning point, then you need to look for a high. But we'll keep you guys updated, obviously, on that. Let's look at price. So it's not just time that matters, the cycles, but we gotta obviously price and trend. Back to BTC. Likes to flip over to 0x. So we're still in this long-term pattern of lower highs we've talked about. The pivot longer term is still 8,500, call it. You got the 200-day up here, which traders are going to be all over. We have the bands here at 6,800. You'll see in a minute here this intermediate term, the intermediate term lower highs is right around this area. The market's tested a few times. I'll show you in futures. The daily cycle's on its way up. Let's just backtrack to the weekly. Weekly cycle is rolling over after only kind of traversing about halfway up the typical oscillation. So this is pretty classic, guys. We're just still in this consolidation phase. But the fact that the market's holding this floor, it is constructive. Again, to get any type of momentum that we're used to the last several years in crypto, you gotta have to get higher highs. So the market's still not quite ready for that. Let's do the 4 hour real quick. We've got pi above the market, so prices in the southern hemisphere. Prices in the southern hemisphere. It's interesting that the 200's converging with pi line right into that resistance. So 68.80 is pretty big resistance. I do like the fact that the market is slowly making higher lows here on the intermediate term. And if you're paying attention, the bands are starting to turn up, right? So here, notice how the bands are all lying on top of each other. That's indicative of a range trade. Okay, you have equidistant highs, equidistant lows. So that sideways price action, this choppiness, creates the bands to kind of lay on top of each other. But now we started to turn up, and that's largely because here you're starting to make higher lows, and then this was a higher high relative to here, and then now this is another kind of pretty significant high back inside of this range, and we got another higher low here. So the market is actually technically in an uptrend now for this time frame, which is a 4 hour intermediate term. And then we should look to see a lot. We can look to see even more of a pop and think about a move towards that daily pivot at 8,000 if we can get above pi, if we can get above the 200, if we can get above this resistance. So 6,900, let's see what the level is in futures, but looks like it's pretty much the 6,900 area is what we're going to care about. Let me just switch to futures. We'll do a top down here as well. I like to split the screens. One, because I'm usually trading something else, like euro versus the pound or euro versus the dollar. But it's not such a stretch chart horizontally when you split it like this. It just comes out a little bit easier. So here's our support that keeps holding. It's basically 6,000 in futures. Lots of people want to short the market there. We've kept saying do not do that. That's shortening the hole. So we've been better buyers, which has been the right call. And now notice this was an intermediate term uptrend. This was an intermediate term downtrend. And then that price is starting to get above that regression channel. So you're starting, again, like we just talked about, you're starting to turn up, which is constructive over the intermediate term. This daily cycle is crossing up too, guys. So that could be a nice setup for a swing trade. And then again, here we have the same thing, the 200 and pi above the market, right? So futures, it's 68.78. You got the 200 here at 7,000. So I would just use, I mean, if you're hedging, this is a great spot to hedge here, 7,000. You can see that, I mean, if I sold a little bit of a hedge, I covered it. Here I was actually coming out of a long. Here I was rebuying. I came out of a little bit more of my long when I added back down here at 6,300. So I'm still sitting net long, but I'm not afraid to lighten up a little bit on my futures, definitely into this resistance here in front of 68.50 and into the 200. So depending on how you play it, maybe you lighten up on your actual coins and maybe you hedge a little bit with futures, or if you're not playing futures at all, just use that as a level of, hey, maybe where I should lighten up and book some gains if you bought well down here around 6,000. We were nibbling on some of the alts down here, so that would hopefully make sense. We can book some of that if we test 7,000. All right, so that's a pretty key level on the up. And then on the downside, the higher lows are 6,200, but again, 6,000, 5,800. This is kind of the hard deck, right? So you don't want to be short with very small reward. All right, here you want to be long because you got lots of upside, and your risk is small on the downside. Just take a look at Ether next. So nothing but lower highs and lower lows. The only thing I could see, I mean, this is typical of alts. They're all in this lower high, lower low pattern, even on the daily charts, which is much more bearish than kind of how BTC is sitting. But this was the old base here at 250, 2 3/4 that the market broke out from and went on a huge run. So it was too bad we couldn't hold the lows from April at 350. And so now we're kind of in this spot where I don't really want to add necessarily. And it's going to be hard to kind of get back through 50 on the up. So I don't think Ether's really going anywhere until BTC breaks out probably above that 8,000 pivot. And I don't know how much you want to keep bottom fishing here. So at some point, it's just you got to let the market prove itself and start making higher lows before you add. So I've been very quiet. Same thing on Litecoin. It's just bouncing around the bottom. The old base was basically right back here at this 50 area. So we've retraced 100%, guys, basically of this bull run into the end of the year. And it's taken a long time to work that off, but time heals. So these are the types of basing patterns you need to see. And then let's see if we can start turning the corner here and making higher highs and higher lows, and then that'll be a chance to get more aggressive. I mean, this old support is like 35. I'd maybe add back to some stuff that we took off on these pops in front of 100. But I haven't touched Litecoin in a while either. Bcash, Bitcoin Cash, nothing but lower lows. You don't really have a base to work off of unless I guess you could find maybe like a Kraken chart. But it's the same thing. I don't. Why would I buy Bitcoin Cash if I'm not even bullish on BTC yet? You know, there'll be plenty of times, guys, to get back in here on this stuff once the momentum changes. So I've just left that one alone. Also, start with some of the altcoins that we like. BNB, nice place to add down here. I mean, yeah, we broke 12, but this coin is so strong. It's starting to move up. We can watch this pivot here at 10 and then watch the bands, and 12 was support. That's going to be resistance. But we can be buyers on dips here on the hourly and 4-hour. You can see how here's the 4-hour getting above the band. So this next pullback actually is buyable in Binance. EOS, this is versus BTC. I don't see the rush to be in here. If you wanna increase your position from a timing perspective, it makes sense. I mean, these are back to levels when my second purchase I had versus Bitcoin even. So this is probably worth a nibble, but again, you just have nothing but lower highs. Same looking chart there for gas. Look at Neo in a second. IOTA, another here we're experiencing another bounce, guys, probably to a lower high as a daily cycle comes up. So you're in phase one. For those of you that know the model, phase one is just lower lows, so you don't have the same bottoming process there yet. It's just not time. Neo, more of the same. Kind of looks like Ether just broke to new lows, and it's actually below its base from December. It's just awfully cheap, 20 bucks, and people were paying chasing in front of 200. It's crazy. So we're definitely cheap longer term. There's going to be a time here where we turn the corner, and these are going to be really good levels to buy. I mean, they're worth nibbles. You just, like, you know, I think I've made my point there. You don't have to be in a rush. Salt, gosh, I don't know, how low did we get in dollar terms? I'll have to look in a second. I haven't really looked at Walton Chain in a while. It's had a pretty, so here it moved to a lower low, V bottomed, had a nice run on the daily cycle, and back at the bands. If you bottom fish well, you got to come out of some here. This next pullback on the daily cycle, though, that should be one we should put on our watch list. 0x versus BTC. I like the level down here. I like pie lines showing up. So let's look at 0x versus the dollar tether. Thought I had a chart. Zcash. It's a buy. 0x has been kind of in a long-term wedge here. So it looks good down here. This would be one I'd add. We had a nice profit take up there that we signaled. You guys can see the long-term wedge right here. So you're at the bottom of the range. Play for a move back up this way. I like 0x. Like Binance on dips. Cardano had an ad lately. I don't know if I got it on this chart. I think first BCC. Hanging out here around $1. This is one we've actually been trying to work at lower lows. So had a pretty good buy down here. I expect to move back to the bands, and we'll lighten up and try to keep working it. I mean, Dash, all these charts are going to be very similar. just amazing. I mean, if I was wanted to put some serious capital to work, now's the time to pick up a master node on Dash for sure. Sell it next time it's above 1,000. But pretty low levels. It's below its base from October. It's crazy how low this has gotten, huh? I don't think these alts guys are going much lower. There's just not room for 'em. I mean, I guess at 148 you can, but something like Cardano, Neo, Mise go. If you're ever coming into this cycle, I'd identified, wow, below that long-term base. Just like everything else. Maybe we get a turning point here. See a rally into September, kind of like BTC was showing. Just do a couple more, guys. Monero still in front of its base. That's the story, guys. We just retraced 100% back to these prior bases. Bounce off of 80. Looks like you're kind of turning the corner. It's kind of hard to see on the daily chart. Let me show you on the 4-hour. Wouldn't be surprised if we're above the bands. Yeah, so starting to get above the bands. You're making higher lows. Monero looks pretty good here also. I like this on the intermediate term. Add that one to your watch list, or I might signal that here by this afternoon. It's probably good for now, guys. I'll try to catch up. Let's see if this market heats up into the end of the month again, and now that we got September on the horizon, and we can get a little bit more active in here at the higher lows on the intermediate term. So I'll keep you posted. Hope that helps.